Welcome to the Breaking News Bears podcast. I'm your host, Chris Capone, joined alongside my co-host, once again, Evan Davis. And with the trade deadline less than 10 days away, teams are finally getting to the point where they must decide how they want to move their team forward towards the end of the season. Teams are looking to buy and sell different players from bad teams to contenders. We're going to discuss which teams should buy and sell, along with a little game where we're each going to discuss four players and list names where we determine they should be after the July 30th deadline. Along with a little look back to the beginning of the season with our awards predictions and where they currently stack up at the midway point. But first, Evan, I want to get your thoughts on what team do you think should buy the most at the deadline?
It's that two-way tie between the Orioles and the Dodgers, just two teams that have a really nice farm system and two teams that are kind of in win now mode. I think you can make an argument that they would be one and two. I know they're competing for Tarek Skubal, but as well as Garrett Crochet, just a lot of options. Those two teams definitely need to be big buyers.
Yeah, the Orioles desperately need pitching depth, both rotation and bullpen. I don't know if you can really trust the Orioles rotation right now, other than Corbin Burns, obviously.
Yeah.
You can trust him, but I don't know if you could trust Albert Suarez or Grayson Rodriguez in a series in the ALDS or ALCS. I don't know if you can really trust them at this point. And with the Dodgers, is Max Muncy ever going to come back this season? Like he has been out for how long is it? Like the end of May, it seems like.
It's
And
been like almost 2 months now, and it all started with an oblique injury in batting practice, and with his, whatever's looming on, the Rays are talking about Isak Paredes. I've been so high on him for the last 2 years. Uh, that's a guy that the Dodgers could be after. Their farm system has a lot of talent. Like right now, you can make an argument they have a top 10 farm system in baseball. I'm hoping and praying after the trade deadline that their farm system's in the mid 20s.
yeah, especially with the bullpen depth of this Dodgers bullpen right now, they really need some help fortifying that bullpen. And just going rounding right back to the Orioles, uh, do you think just a little side question, do you think Jackson Holiday would be available in a possible trade package for Luis Robert and Garrett Crochet? Just a quick little question.
I think that would be too much of an overpay. If I'm the Orioles, Jackson Holiday's in a deal for Tarek Skubal, but he's not in a deal for Crochet and Robert.
Yeah. And that's just one of the things that I've seen floating around. I think the guys on Talking Baseball had talked about it where
Yeah, I think it's only Skubal you would even entertain that.
yeah, and even imagine that with a top of the year rotation with Tarek Skubal and Corbin Burns, that would be elite stuff in at the deadline or in the rotation. Uh, One of the teams that I think should obviously sell the Oakland A's. They should do more than sell. They should sell the team. But Brent Rooker, Mason Miller, JJ Bleday, and Lucas Erceg should all be traded at the deadline. I think when they're going to go on their trip across California and eventually end up in Nevada, I don't think Mason Miller should be on the team. I think you could probably get the most out of Mason Miller right now, selling him at the deadline. And Brent Rooker has straight up mashed this season. He's at 22 home runs as we currently speak, and he could really fill a nice DH role slash fourth outfield role for a contender. And I think like the A's just need to sell off at the
Yeah.
deadline.
Yeah, I mean, Brent Rooker, as of now, a 951 OPS, on base percentage at 372. You look at his metrics, incredible offensively, but as you had just alluded to, his defense is atrocious. I mean,
Yeah,
it's really, really bad. And that's what I think is really kind of handicapping teams. Like, obviously, the Dodgers need an outfielder, they need outfield help. But the problem with them is like their outfielders, like a guy like James Outman, is so good defensively. I don't know if you saw that
his
incredible
catches. Yeah,
catch. I mean, sacrificing the body. Um, he's a really good defensive player. It's just his offense is terrible. And, obviously DH is already locked up. So I could totally see a team like Atlanta going after Brent Rooker. Like they need bats, they need power, they need something. A team like Seattle could go after him where they don't really have a designated slot hitter already at the
yeah,
DH spot.
they've been kind of running Cal Riley or Mitch Garver, whichever one isn't catching, which
Yeah.
yeah.
But those teams for sure. But like it's hard with his value because it's like he's a liability defensively, but you want the bat. And Brent Rooker's been DHing for the A's already.
Yeah. Uh, the Braves are an interesting team. I don't know. Has Marcell Ozuna played in the outfield at all this season? I
I
don't think he
don't think so,
has.
no.
So I think they might be out of the question for him. But I do like the Seattle fit with them just because they really need a DA. They can't hit the ball to save their lives right now. And I just saw a thing on Twitter where they lost their 10-game lead in the AL West in the fastest span in MLB history. It took 24 games for them to lose a 10-game lead to the Astros.
Yeah,
Eh,
unreal.
Unreal stuff over in Seattle. But
It's because they
yeah, I
can't
think
hit. They don't have
yeah,
offense. They
yeah. And it's something that you're putting one of your catchers out there every day at DH. It's not good because they some of them need rest days. And Cal Riley, he's not really hitting for average right now anyway. And Mitch Garver hasn't been that good either. So you're putting out 200 batting average at bats for every day of the season at your DH spot, and it's just not something good right now.
yeah.
Um, Another team that I think should sell, the Blue Jays need to sell at the deadline. I don't even know if they're really going to be able to trade um Bo Bichette right now because he
Yeah.
just ended up back on the IL and he's gone for multiple weeks. I don't know if anybody's actually going to trade for Bo Bichette anymore. I think that's dead in the water. But other pieces like Yimi Garcia, Yusei Kikuchi, and I believe you brought this up in the previous episode or another previous episode where Kevin Gosman should be looked at to be traded.
Yeah.
Um,
That was last episode that we did.
yeah, yeah. Teams should be looking to give him or give the Jays, prospects because he is on contract for a while and he
Yeah.
is still a really good pitcher. And like you said in the previous episode, his home splits are terrible.
Yeah. He can't pitch at the Rogers Center.
Yeah, so looking for the right price, that's the only thing for the Blue Jays is to
Yeah.
find the right price.
I in regards to Bo Bichette, I think the injury kind of just made it easier for teams to move off on him in terms of like, are we going to trade for him or not? Just because I mean, he's just been atrocious offensively. I mean, let's call a spade here. I mean, you look at it, barrel
Yeah.
rate sucks, chase rate not good, whiff not good, doesn't walk a ton. His ex woba, ex slug, it's all so close to being poor or like just above average. And the Jays are going to want a ton for him just given the fact that it's Bo Bichette. But for a guy that's hit 4 home runs this year, batting 223 with an OPS at 597, I mean, if you're the Jays, you can't sell low on Bo Bichette. And if you're a team that's in contention, like the Braves, for instance, that need a shortstop, or I guess you could say the Dodgers. I don't know what their plan is going to be like with Miguel Rojas moving forward. He's 35 years old. He's not going to be an everyday guy. Um, but you just look at teams all around, even to a certain extent. I guess you could even throw out the Yankees just with Anthony Volpe not really being all that great. But then,
Yeah.
like, are you really? So it's just hard. And if a team is going to trade for a guy like Bo Bichette right now at this current value, you're not getting a top 10 prospect for him in return.
Yeah, that's the one thing with Bo. I think the Jays are more likely just to hold him on for next year because this you have to look at this year as just simply being a down year. I don't think Bo Bichette's fallen off a cliff and suddenly is one of the worst hitters in baseball. He damn near well almost led the league in hits 3 straight years, or the American League in hits 3 straight years. I think and the only reason he missed out last year was because he had a calf injury again that sidelined him 20 games. But I really don't think Bo Bichette is the type of player that like he hit almost 300. Before this year he hit 300 for his career. I don't think he just all of a sudden teams figured him out and realized, oh yeah, no, this just throw sliders outside the zone, he'll swing at them. But
No, for sure. But I think at the same time, it's just like right now, I don't think a team is going to be doing much with him.
yeah. And that's the thing. I don't think the Jays are gonna look at that and say, well, we need to sell him off now because you're not gonna get as much value as you would have got for him.
Hmm.
Um, there's two or one last team that I think should really buy the Pittsburgh Pirates. We discussed this before. Paul Skeens has brought new life to this Pittsburgh Pirates team, and ever since from his call up from AAA, he's looked like the best pitcher in the National League,
Yeah.
while turning them around this season, and they've been 33 and 26 since his call up. Now, we did discuss in a previous episode, the Pirates need a new catcher.
Yeah.
Yasmani Grandal and Joey Bart cannot be your starting catchers. And even in the outfield, Michael A. Taylor cannot be out there in the outfield as your
Mm,
starting center fielder. Um, and we did discuss Elias Diaz would be a really nice addition for this Pirates team.
yeah.
One interesting thing of note is that the Colorado Rockies have expressed to Ryan McMahon that he won't be traded.
Yeah.
They haven't given Elias Diaz that same luxury. And I do believe that if the Pirates were really serious about making a move and a push for the playoffs, as they should,
Mm,
they really should be trying to push for the postseason right now. I think
yeah.
Elias Diaz would be a really good addition for them.
Yeah, I think, I mean, this Pirates team, they just won the series against the Philadelphia Phillies, who, by the way, for people that don't know, the Phillies are 25 and 20 on the road. There's just some food for thought right there. But nonetheless, the Pirates just a very convincing and dominating series win over the Philadelphia Phillies right now. And with the expanded wild card just being such a factor, I mean, the Pirates only find themselves a half game back of the Mets. Like, this is a team that's legit, but their offense is just so streaky. Like, obviously, you have O'Neal Cruz, you have Andrew McCutchen, you have an all-star in Brian Reynolds. And then you go down and Connor Joe is like sneakily a pretty solid leadoff hitter. And he has the speed that once he gets on base, he's an immediate threat. I, I just, you look at this team and it's just like, to what extent do you buy? I think that's the question that looms for the Pirates. It's just to what extent are you going to be a buyer? Because if you're not going to build your team overnight into a contender this year, if anything, you would maybe get ownership that's actually willing to sell. But you know, you look at this Pirates team that's a low market team. Is Tamar Johnson on the table for a big deal? Like, could you imagine Skeens and Scooble
Yeah.
in that 1-2 with Jared Jones as your three? Jared Jones is your three. Like, he would be the best number three option of all time. But is you just got to figure out what's available. And with a small market team like the Pittsburgh Pirates that are unwilling to sell or unwilling to pay for players, you kind of need that homegrown talent to really excel, like a Jared Jones and like a Paul Skeens.
Yeah, the pitching is elite. It's just that offense, and they really don't have any. Like Nick Gonzalez has been a really good call up for them. I think we talked about it.
Luis Ortiz, I don't know if like has anyone seen his stats since he became a starter, but in 33 innings as a starter, he's only allowed 3 runs.
Yeah, that's
And
another
he
thing
just
too,
shut
where it's
out the
like,
Phillies.
yeah, like they have a good eye for, pitching and figuring out like people to plug into their rotation in their bullpen. Like they have a decent staff. It's just the offense where it's looked really paltry at times.
Yeah,
Um,
it's again, it's to what extent do you buy? I mean, like the top 10 prospects, 3 of them are shortstops or third basemen. Like,
and you already
and
have O'Neal Cruz.
And you already have O'Neal Cruz, and these guys are mashing at high A, and I mean, they're relatively young. Like you look at a guy like Mitch Jebb, 22 years old. I mean, he is in high A, but he's still putting up really solid numbers at 326 on base percentage. Is he in the center of a package maybe for like a Luis Robert and a Garrett Crochet package deal? Because I know the White Sox are trying to do things on their trying to package them together. But if even if you tack Luis Robert, like there's a bat that you could put in the outfield that can really light up PNC,
Yeah, I think
especially with that short porch and left.
yeah, that would be really great for the Pirates to add on to somebody. And like you said, a lot of their top prospects are shortstops, and O'Neal Cruz is still here, and he's only 25 years old. I think you just got to let him be the shortstop and sell off your assets. Not all of them are going to come up, and not all of them are going to play shortstop. So you need
Yeah.
to sell off some of them, and maybe the White Sox look at them and find something interesting with them.
Yeah.
Uh, the last team I want to talk about to sell is the Los Angeles Angels, and uh, like this franchise and Artie Moreno needs to realize that they need to fully embrace a rebuild and move on from trying to put rosters together, win with Mike Trout. And obviously he's injured and he won't be dealt, but they have some really decent pieces that I think teams could look at and add
Whoa.
them. Luis Rengifo, Kevin Pillar, Carlos Estevez, and Tyler Anderson would all be really good pieces. But yeah, Kevin Pillar, Luis Rengifo, Carlos Estevez, and Tyler Anderson could all really be good pieces for contenders, especially Tyler Anderson. He's 34 years old. I
Hmm.
think any team could look at him right now and, really be interested in his services.
Yeah, I think like for a guy like Kevin Pillar, it's a very interesting situation for him to be in, just given the fact that, I mean, obviously age. Congratulations to him, the 10-year
Yeah,
mark. I
service
mean,
time.
yeah, for people that don't really know, like that just mean I mean, he's basically taken care of for the rest of his life, just in terms of like financial benefits and health care and everything. So great for him. But a guy like Kevin Pillar, just an interesting story because it's like like if I'm a team like a contender, we know what Kevin Pillar can do. We know what he's capable of in the postseason. Um, it's just to what value does he bring? Like, and you look over the last stretch of these 30 games, he's batting 195 with a 287 slug. Like I don't see him getting moved. However, a guy like Luis Rengifo, on the other hand, I mean, you
Yeah.
look at him. Did anybody know at one point he was leading the MLB in batting average? I mean, this is a guy, he's 27 years old. He's going to cost a lot. He's batting 315 on the year with an 800 OPS. Doesn't hit for a ton of power. Apologies, but does have 22 stolen bases. He reminds me of Elaine Thomas. And you just wonder like what is that return going to look like? Over his last 30 games, 281 batting average, last 7 games, a 393 batting average. Unreal numbers. It's just, is that a top 10 prospect and an MLB ready player? Like, we just, you don't know. And it's Luis Rengifo who's playing in Anaheim where the expectations are minimal. No one knows how he's going to thrive in the big lights. And if he does get traded, it's most likely going to be to a contender. We just never seen him in that big spot.
Yeah. I think Renifo's a really interesting addition because he can plug every infield position too, similar to we kind of previously mentioned with Isaac Paredes.
Hmm.
He can play shortstop, he can play second, and he can play third. Um, but he's also a switch hitter, and that's such a valuable asset for many
Hmm.
teams. He's not going to hit for power, but he can get on base and he can steal bases. I think a lot of teams are going to look at Luis Rengifo and see that he's a free agent after next year.
Uh-huh.
But I think a lot of teams are going to look at Luis Rengifo and he's one of the players that I won't be surprised ends up on a contender and does really well.
Yeah, he definitely could. It's just, you're flying under the radar in Anaheim. Expectations aren't insanely high, but I mean, this is a guy, to your point, that you could just plug in your 6, 7 spot in the lineup. And like
Yeah.
if he gets on base, then great. And then if he does get on base, he's gonna steal.
Yeah. It's something it's really he's really under the radar and he's been under the radar for a couple of years now. But
I wonder if the crosstown trade, please, please and thank you. We could
it
use a third
would it,
baseman.
it would be a really nice fit. Yeah, I think Luis Renifo would be a really nice addition. So now we'll go to a little game just called like kind of like how Inside the NBA does who he play for. It's like I'm gonna say where will he be after the July 30th. So we're just gonna kind of go back and forth, and I'm just gonna give you names, you'll give me names, and we'll just list where they think they should where would the best fit be for them at the deadline and
Or is it
where
where do we think they'll get
yeah,
traded?
like where do we think they'll get traded?
Okay,
So I'll just start it off. I'll just ask you, Luis Robert.
Phillies. And then I'll go. I mean, it might be hard now, but why don't we go Bo Bichette, see if he does get traded?
If Bo Bichette does get traded, I would say the Dodgers. That would be the team that I just think he's not many teams are really looking for a shortstop, so I think Bo Bichette.
Yeah, and I guess I'll elaborate with Luis Robert. Could you just imagine him at Citizens Bank Park in October? Like,
Electric.
oh my God, Schwarber, Robert, Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, Castellanos, Real Muto. And then I mean you got Rojas at the bottom, but I mean he's not hitting for power. But
Yeah.
um Blue Jays legend Whit Merrifield.
He's gone. He got waived.
No, I know, I'm kidding.
But yeah. Uh let's go next. Garrett Crochet, where do you think he'll be?
I think he's going to the Orioles. I think the Orioles, they're going to be aggressive. They've never really been aggressive at the deadline. Um, Ken Rosenthal, or no, was it Ken Rosenthal? Wait, I'm sorry. Who's on the Foul Territory podcast? Is it?
It's Ken Rosenthal.
Yeah, it is Ken Rosenthal. Okay, sorry. I was right. Yeah. He dropped like a subtle Woj bomb during the All-Star break saying that Corbin Burns doesn't have any intent of re-signing with the Orioles. So like if you get Crochet, you at least get him for a little bit of time. So I could totally see the Orioles finally making a big move. And I would say Grayson Rodriguez, you can maybe trust in October. We've seen him play in October before, but I think if you had those three at the top of your rotation, especially with Bradish out, and Dean Kramer kind of finagling his way back in, I think he would go to the Orioles.
Yeah, I think Garrett Crochet would be a really nice fit just because they need rotation help at the top of their rotation.
Okay,
Yeah.
Mason Miller, we talked about the A's selling. Where do you think he ends up?
I think Mason Miller is going to end up in the Baltimore Orioles bullpen. Like you previously said, just with Garrett Crochet, I was thinking Mason Miller would end up kind of at the back there. Now, obviously, they do have Craig Kimbrell, but I don't know if you really trust him in the postseason, and I know that could bring up some controversy in the bullpen where you have Mason Miller and Kimbrel, but I think Mason Miller should end up as an Oriole at the deadline, just because they have all the prospects in the world. I think they should sell some of them and try and get Mason Miller.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Mason Miller, I don't see how he doesn't get traded.
Yeah. Um, Jazz Chisholm is an interesting name. We haven't really brought up the Marlins, but Jazz Chisholm is very likely to be traded at the deadline.
Could
Is there
totally
anyone?
see him going to the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, I think the outfield help they need right now, Jazz Chisholm would be a very, very clean piece to add to them.
Yeah. And he's not like a positional player per se. Like he doesn't have a set position, but with the Atlanta Braves, he's obviously going to be in your outfield. I just think they need him. They need him.
Yeah. Um, who's another player? Pete Alonso is another player that, could likely or not likely be. There's been something in the water about a potential trade just because he is
Yeah.
a free agent at the end of the year, and obviously Scott Boras clients. So is there anywhere you think Pete Alonso could end up going at the deadline?
Yeah, Seattle. Like we talk about the Mariners needing offense. This is a team that's like low key gotten into spending. They gave a pretty sizable contract to Robbie Ray and Luis Castillo. I mean, obviously Robbie Ray then got traded back for Mitch Haniger. Mitch Haniger going from Seattle to San Francisco back to Seattle. But this is a team that's been willing to spend clearly, and I think instead of spending on all this great pitching, you need to build up the offense. So now I'll circle it back with you for these final two. We talk about the Tampa Bay Rays. They've mentioned selling Isak Paredes. He's gonna require a haul of prospects. So where do you think he ends up?
I think, like you said previous episode, I think he's going to end up a Dodger. If
Yeah.
the, if Paredes ends up being moved, I think the Dodgers just have the perfect need for his talent right now, and in both ways, the bat and the defense. I think Isak Paredes would be the perfect fit for the Dodgers.
Yeah, I could totally see like if the Dodgers have already negotiated once with the Rays, obviously the class now for Pepio deal.
Mhm.
Um, I could totally see it, even if it means giving up three of your best 10 prospects, like this point that the Dodgers are in with Freeman, Betts, Otani, Smith, like what's the point of prospects right now?
Yeah, I think Paredes definitely has to be moved at the deadline, and I think it just makes perfect sense for the Dodgers to get him right now. Muncy's still out. You have a third baseman, and when Muncy comes back, you can plug him literally anywhere in the infield.
Yeah, so this is also like a very big name as well. It's Tanner Scott. Where do we think he ends up?
Funnily enough, I also think he could end up a Dodger.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine you have then the two best left-handed relievers in terms of ERA in baseball, or yeah, like two of the best.
Yeah, I think Tanner Scott. There was two places I could see really with Tanner Scott. It's the Phillies and it's the Dodgers. I think both of the top teams in the NL could really look at Tanner Scott and decide we can add him to our bullpen. Like he's been really good last year, this year. He's been a really solid pitcher. I think he could end up moving to either the Dodgers or the Phillies, but I think the Dodgers might edge them out.
Yeah, I don't know, like weird thing for me, and I guess like the funny thing for me is like I don't see Tanner Scott ending up as a Philly just because I think they have too many left-handed arms already. Like you look at it, they already have Alvarado. They already have who is it? I'm sorry. They also have Matt Strom in the bullpen. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? I thought Jeff Hoffman was a lefty for some reason.
They have
Never
Gregory
mind.
Soto. Gregory
Gregory
Soto is a
Soto, but
lefty.
he's like, you're not going to trust him in October. He probably won't be on the postseason roster. Oh, that's the other lefty I was thinking of. So you have three lefty relievers already. Do you want a fourth? I don't know. I could totally see the Dodgers with Tanner Scott. I could also see the Red Sox with Tanner Scott. Their
Mm.
pitching is the fourth best in baseball, just in terms of ERA. But I mean, obviously, two heartbreaking losses to the Dodgers. Yes. But this is a team that I think is still gonna buy at the deadline. I mean, now with those two losses in heartbreaking fashion, they find a 4.5 game setback in the division, now go back to 6.5 games. But just with the expanded wild card, and this team is just so dangerous. Like when they're on, they're on. And the Red Sox currently hold that third wild card spot in a tie with the Royals. And I just think this Red Sox team could just be so sneaky come October. I could
Yeah.
see them being big buyers, and I could see that starting with a guy like Tanner Scott.
And the Red Sox also just have a lot of, big bats and really good pitching. Like their bullpen is already really good.
Yeah,
Kenley Jansen has pitched incredible
yeah.
over the last couple or basically this whole year.
Except for
Um,
last night, but
yeah. But other than that, a lot
well, it
of
was
these
his
teams,
first home run that he's given up, but I apologize for interrupting. I'm sorry.
yeah. But still, the first home run, yeah, like you said, the first home run he's given up all year.
Yeah.
Really great stuff from Kenley. But yeah, like that could definitely be a good spot for Tanner Scott.
Yeah, I just think the Marlins like you could honestly get I feel like you would get more for Tanner Scott than Mason Miller. Just because with Mason Miller, you don't really know what his stuff is really going to be like. And with Tanner Scott, you at least know he's reliable. And that I could sound so stupid, but I just with Mason Miller, it's like yeah, he has the stuff, but like it's also Oakland. Like there's just, you know, and I know I'm arguing with Miami, but I would just trust the guy that's a bit older just in terms of, at finding ways to battle adversity.
Yeah. Moving on, we're gonna look back at our award predictions from the beginning of the year and just kind of see where we're at right now. First off, I'll ask, or I guess I could just see what you put down. You had your AL Cy Young at the beginning of the season, or not too far into the year. Uh, you had your AL Cy Young as Tariq Skubal. You still have
Yeah.
him as, yeah.
Was that midway through the year or did I
Uh,
well, my preseason prediction was Corbin Burns, and then I switched it to
Oh,
Tariq Skubal.
yeah.
But I mean, there's
Either
no
way,
argument for either of those two. I guess we could do. I mean, like if I'm looking back at like my preseason ones, if that's what we want to do as well. Like I'll just go down the line. Soto for MVP. I had Evan Carter for Rookie of the Year, and I had Corbin Burns as my Cy Young.
yeah. I think that was like I had Luis Castillo as my AL Cy Young entering the year, and he hasn't been the greatest. He's one of those guys where he didn't have a Cy Young vote for his entire career up until I think last year. I think
Yeah.
he didn't have a single Cy Young vote. Um, but he just hasn't been that good this year in comparison to where I thought he would be, a 3.55 ERA.
Hmm.
I also had as my MVP, I also had Juan Soto, and then I had as my rookie of the year, uh, yeah, I also had Evan Carter.
Yeah. Well, with Carter, it's just been injuries that have
Yeah,
really plagued him. Um, which kind of just sucks. Like you just feel for him and like that whole Rangers team, like Josh Young getting hurt, um, Evan Carter, and then like Wyatt Langford was like in and out of the lineup as well. But I think now, if you look at AL Rookie of the Year, I have zero clue who's winning it. Like I have zero clue.
Yeah, it started off as Luis Heel, as like when he got off on that really hot tear. And I
I
think
still
it's
think he could win it.
yeah, I think he might be the front runner right now. Let me check the odds. I'm pretty sure he would be the front runner because I don't really think of anybody else right now as a oh, right now they have Wyatt Langford as the odds-on favorite.
Oh, interesting.
I think that's kind of odd, honestly.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it should be Luis Seal at this point.
I just think it's the rookie of the year in the AL has just been such a joke. Like I I don't understand, and I think it was just preseason Vegas was trying to take the money, but like I never understood why Jackson Holiday was the prohibited favorite in the AL,
When he wasn't
considering
even called up.
when he hadn't even been called up yet. And I think that was just such a money move by Vegas. Like I never understood it. Um, I think it's still Luis Heel. Like he's had one or two bad starts, like big whoop. Um, it's just I think it's him, Langford. I mean, they're talking about Rafaela from the Red Sox. It's just his baseball metrics are so terrible that he's gonna come back down to earth eventually.
I think it was funny because the MLB on Fox actually had posted that fans voted for him to be the rookie of the year at the midway point for the AL, and it's just such a jarring difference between the two leagues. Like in the NL, it's Paul Skeens. He's the rookie of the year right now.
Uh-huh.
It's just so night and day between the two leagues. But
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like Paul Skeens, he's the NL Rookie of the Year. Like
yeah,
that door has been shut. If Yamamoto was still healthy, I feel like he could have challenged Skeens, just given the fact that Yamamoto's F WAR ranks second among rookies and he hasn't pitched in over a month.
I mean
Um,
even Imanaga. Sorry
ah,
to interrupt, but like
no, but I don't know. I feel like Imanaga's kind of fallen off a little bit.
yeah,
Um, Still a fantastic pitcher, but uh just with how hard it is to win the Cy Young as a pitcher already, and I know I'm saying that with Yamamoto, but like outside of like his ERA was inflated just because of that first start in Japan, and then after that start, his ERA has been sub two, so that's why I give Yamamoto um not like the Dodgers bias. I just think like, the ERA was inflated. It's kind of hard to come back down to earth after giving up 5 runs through an inning in your first start. But you look at Imanaga, like he had a really nice start last one against Baltimore, 6 hits, no runs allowed, 6 strikeouts. But the previous ones, I mean, you're talking his month of July was just awful. He had an ERA at 5.67, and that's what's really killed him.
yeah, it's really been bad for Imanaga. That one start where he gave up what was it, 10
10
earned
runs.
runs
Yeah.
in 3 innings. That was really what, has inflated him. He's had a lot
Yeah.
of quality starts, but it's just been that one game has
Yeah.
kind of solidified him.
Yeah, like I think that month though, because I mean, you look at it, it was just, I mean, well, yeah, that one definitely did balloon it. But even leading up to that, like 7 earned runs against the Brewers, that was his first blow up start of the year. That was the May 29th game, when the Brewers took him to town. But I don't know. I don't really I haven't really thought of him as the NL Rookie of the Year. And also, like, I get it's his first year in the major leagues, but he's 30 years old.
Yeah,
Like, let's settle down here. I mean, like, come on. Like, he's a rookie because he came from Japan, but like Yamamoto's 25, Skeens is like 22. Those are rookies.
yeah, he's been it's with Imanaga, it's 30-year-old people shouldn't really be classified as rookies, especially when you've been
But
pitching your entire life since you've been like 18.
but I only hold that to the extent of like if he had a sub 2 ERA at this point still, then I would consider it, but still.
Yeah,
Not a huge strikeout guy, and he's 30 years old. He's
yeah,
not a rookie.
yeah. Ben Simmons treatment. All right,
Yeah,
moving on to the NL. I had my NL's MVP as Ronald Acuna, and obviously that's dead in the water.
yeah,
Um, my NL Cy Young was, or my NL Rookie of the Year was Yoshinobu Yamamoto. I just
same.
thought he was gonna,
I mean, he
yeah,
did. He just got hurt, but
yeah. But I I just had him because I didn't think Paul Skeens would get called up this early.
Yeah.
That was my reasoning. And then my Cy Young was Zach Wheeler.
Hmm. So
Yeah.
I had Harper as my NL MVP, which I mean, it's going to Otani. I didn't want to sound like a homer at the beginning of the year, but I mean, he might be he's winning MVP. Like unless
Yeah.
something else pops up, he's winning MVP. So I had Harper as my MVP for the value pick for any of you sports bettors out there. Spencer Strider I had as my Cy Young award. Obviously, kind of similar with you and Acuna. That one's dead in the water. And then
Yeah.
my NL Rookie of the Year was Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And had he not have gotten hurt, I think he definitely would have challenged Skeens for it. A 6-2 record, a 2.92 ERA, 84 punch outs in 74 innings. And that last start that he had against the Yankees, I mean, he shut down one of the better offenses
At the time,
on the
especially.
road in
Yeah.
prime time. Like I thought that was like, and then the uptick in his velocity, I guess, killed him because he's
The
out.
next
But
start, yeah. The next start he goes
which I
down.
went to hoping I'd be able to see him pitch, and like I didn't know what anything had happened, and then the second inning or the third inning starts and it's Michael Grove on the mound, and I'm like, who? What happened to Yamamoto? Like, what happened, man?
He was
Um,
just there.
Yeah, but he's throwing at like 120 feet now, so like he should be tuned up by September. But that takes him out of the NL Rookie of the Year race. I mean, it's Paul Skeens. I don't think Skeens is going to win the Cy Young though, just because I think they're going to shut him down. But I don't know how they're going to handle this if they're in a wild card spot.
Yeah, that's the
It's
one. That's the tricky thing about it. It's kind of like what the Nats did with Steven Strasburg, his first real good year, where they
yeah,
had to shut him down.
because he like Skeens has just pitched so much over the last like call it 14 months between LSU in the College World Series and then
The
quickly
minor
going
leagues,
up through the minor leagues and then thankfully enough for the Pirates case always giving them 6 or 7 innings of work. um I I don't know how like it's long term with Skeens and uh I don't know how they're going to handle it. I'm interesting to see and that's why I don't know how they're going to approach the trade deadline.
yeah, that's one of the tricky things about it.
Yeah.
I think that'll just about do it for this episode of the Breaking News Bears podcast. I want to once again thank my co-host Evan Davis for joining me on another episode talking about the MLB season. And I want to thank you again, the listeners, for listening to this podcast. We'll see you all again next week. Thank you all for listening. And we're good.
All
Springer
right.
has 2 home